Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Shailendra, and I have been designated as moderator for this session along with Mandvi, who is looking at the energy side of the whole discussion. So I'll be looking at, all of us together would be looking at industry plus energy. So let me quickly do a call of my set of panelists, and then I'll let Mandvi do for her panel first. So I have Mr. Raju. Mr. Raju is Mr. Raju?
Here, he's here. Yeah, he's here.
Hi.
Okay. Hi. Okay, hi, sir. Dr. Ishwar?
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Yes, hi. And then we have Capt.Amdani. Capt.Amdani.
Good morning. Am I visible and audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks, Shailendra.
Good to see you here. Okay. Mandvi, do you just want to, I thought that perhaps we could have, because we only have standard 1 hour for this, so we could have crisscross between two set of experts so that we get perspective from both the panels, one after another. So if you just want to introduce your set of people, just say hello, and then once they start speaking, we'll introduce them again.
Okay, so we have for energy, we have Abhishek, Kumar.
Hi.
Yeah. And we have Sumaira, Abdulali.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
So good to see you today again.
Yes, and you.
Okay.
So all 5 are here. And so let's start with some sort of opening remarks. Let me first ask Mr. Raju here. Mr. Raju is journalist and author. He has written multiple books on infrastructure project, global trade, stock market, corporate. He has been inducted into Hall of Fame by the PR Council of India. He looks at the challenges of decarbonization of industry and how it requires new technologies, massive investment, and policy support. I think that would be a great start. So let me go to Mr. Raju here and ask him to give his brief remarks about the 3 things that we just said as to how technology, investments, and policy making can help in reaching the goals of sustainability and affecting climate change.
Thanks, Shailendra. Am I audible? I hope I am audible to everyone. Okay. No, so the reason why I thought I'll start off talking about decarbonization of industry is because that's something that is not as much focused upon as, let's say, green energy. You hear a lot of and read a lot about green energy and various initiatives by various governments around the world, and of course that is extremely important. One cannot deny that. But the other aspect of carbon management is how do we decarbonize industry, and that is an extremely critical issue. Perhaps, in a sense, more critical than green energy, because a lot of the technical and even the financial challenges related to green energy are solvable. In my mind, the challenges when it comes to carbon management or low carbon industry are far more difficult. I'll just share some numbers with you. Okay, so there is just industry contributes to almost 35 to 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, of this, just a few industries contribute the bulk of it. That's steel, cement, just to name 2. And the problem in this is that in a lot of industrial processes are impossible to carry them out with renewable energy. Steel, for example, requires extremely high heat. Okay, you're talking about upwards of 1400 to 1500 degrees centigrade. You cannot generate that kind of heat using renewable energy, unfortunately. Okay, we don't have the technology as yet for that. Similarly, for cement, you need the process itself. When you make clinker, which is the basis for Portland cement, the chemical processes itself require entail release of carbon. Okay. Then the other whole thing is about the entire organic chemicals industry, petrochemicals, glycols, alcohols, the whole organic chemical industry. It is completely, by its very definition, it is carbon based. Okay. And these are all products that from these industries are very intrinsic to modern life. You cannot think of living without steel or cement or aluminium or petrochemicals or polymers, for example. So how do we manage this challenge? This is a far, far bigger challenge than the others. Green energy is manageable to an extent, technologically speaking. This is a far more severe problem technologically. It will involve research into new production processes. That itself will require a lot of funding. There are some numbers that I have that in terms of investments, what is required. So just if you look at the steel industry itself, the estimates are that it will require over a couple of $1 trillion to convert existing steel plants to greener options like green hydrogen or something, for them to become carbon neutral. So the tech challenges are huge, both technologically and in terms of finances. And I don't see any easy answers for that. But
yeah, thank you. I think it's an interesting comment that, of course, there are not going to be any easy answers there. So, and let's go to a panel member from, let's say, energy panel, because he spoke about how clean energy or, let's say, renewable energy wouldn't be able to support the decarbonization needs of industry. So how do we tackle that? So if somebody from either Sumaira or Abhishek could reflect on that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we'll call in Abhishek here because has an extensive experience, working on initiatives of environmental, social, economic policy, also on energy transition. So let's ask Abhishek. Abhishek, keep it quick, but if you want to respond to Mr. Kane's comments, do that, as well as add on to what could be, what are the challenges in the energy sector vis-a-vis industry as well as otherwise.
Yeah, thank you, Mandvi. Thank you very much. I can't agree more with Mr. Raju Kane. I think one of the things, and I'm going to speak of energy from a much more broader perspective, because one of the things that we often forget when we talk about energy transition and the optimal way of integrating renewable energy is that we always have a tunnel vision. I'll give you an example. For the longest time, we've been talking about at state level about how the renewable energy, for example, is going to be difficult for distribution sector, the utility sector to sort of incorporate. But the fact is that more and more what we are realizing at our work at subnational level and I think this is a narrative that needs to be built up. Unfortunately, it's not a narrative that is out there. Is that if you look at externalities, the solution to energy consumption, whether it is with industry, transport, what have you, with different sectors or agriculture, can not easily, but through systems approach can be solved if you look at externalities. For example, if I get the agroclimatic farming in a state of Rajasthan and so on and so forth, I will reduce a great amount of water footprint. And that will help me in understanding how to better cost subsidize my electricity tariffs, which will in turn have an impact on the integration of renewables. But no one is trying to so we are kind of looking at the problem in a silo. Sir mentioned about, keeping it very, very brief, Sir mentioned about industry. We were just running an analysis, sir, of 700 sample industries in a couple of states, including Rajasthan. And what we learned is fascinating, that the energy cost for those industries which employ more than 10 workers, but up to 75 workers, up to 500 times of the operating expenses. Now, this is a very interesting insight for me because if you look at energy from the point of view of competitiveness and how Indian economy loses out because we are not able to make something which is competitive enough, energy contributes a huge cost to making our products non-competitive. So hence, I would like to reiterate the point and sum it up over there that issues of energy transition must also need to looked at from external perspectives, from perspectives where typically need to carry out big reforms, but we have been looking at the problem pretty much in silo. And last point that I would like to say is that the conversation today is not, I don't think, is about how to move from point A to point B. It is about how to find the finance, where to unlock the finance from, and how to get to a right ticket size, and for us to basically optimize the technology infusion for energy transition. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Abhishek. And in fact, I was looking as to how would I introduce our next guest, and Dr. Ishwar is the right, person to answer and to add his own onto what both Mr. Kane and Abhishek have pointed out. So Dr. Ishwar is the head and coordinator of TAPME Center for Inclusive Growth and Competitiveness. And he is also talking about what do we do about financial and technical capabilities, because it seems as if he has lost hope from the global north, especially from a global south perspective, that they're not going to do that for us. Perhaps we'll have to do it on our own. So Dr. Ishwar, if you want to continue with this discussion point and add also your own agenda items there.
Right. Thank you, Shailendra. Good morning, everybody, again. It's very interesting to be on this panel. I also find it's very nice that you guys have put industry and energy together. And obviously, industry has a huge dependence on energy, and energy is most certainly one of our biggest industries, so to speak. Right. Point very well taken again from what Abhishek was saying, in that we have a staggering amount of inefficiencies which are embedded in our the way we operate. And my issue has been that since Paris and now with Glasgow as well, the conversation tends to, at least in international media, etc., tends to focus around the responsibility that the global north has, and that the technology has to come from there, and the finance has to come from there, and so on and so forth. And when I hear, with all due respect to them, when I hear heads of state from countries such as, say, Jamaica or Fiji, the Maldives, etc., obviously there is a certain urgency in what they're saying. And also, these are countries, for whatever reason, have historically been sort of dependent on the global north. But we are in a situation, we must realize, where we do not need as much from the global north. We have a phenomenal amount of embedded capability in our own system. And this is something that we've seen both China and India. And China has done, so far has done a much better job than we have, of essentially using their own resources. Using the strength of the size of the domestic market, but also the combined total of embedded knowledge, etc. And this is something that we haven't done so well so far. And this is something, as a country, I think we need to change the way we think about this, and say, and we are the world's experts in Jugaad, right? In resource constrained innovation. So on the one hand, like Abhishek was pointing out, what we have to do is eliminate the inefficiencies, whether it is industry, whether it is agriculture, whether it's in services, So our usage of resources is utterly inefficient and utterly wasteful and utterly, I would say, I don't have a word for it. I mean, it's unacceptable the way we continue to unsustainably use the limited resources we have. Now, so that's something that actually the global north, if you look at Scandinavia or Europe or Japan, etc., they've done an excellent job of figuring out how to use the resource. Or Israel is a prime example of this, right? How to make the most of what you have. Now that's the one side. The other side is we must realize, like COVID to me is a very good example. The reason we've done so well with COVID is one is that we had the world's highest installed capacity in terms of production of vaccines, right? So whether it was Covishield, where the technology came from outside, but we did a damn good job of producing them efficiently and distributing and so on. The second is with Covaxin. Now, we've proved to the world that we have the science that was required to get a vaccine quickly to market. We've tested it, we've used it, the data is there, it is scientific. Now the WHO has given a go ahead. Several countries have accepted. So immediately there's an entire market opportunity which is opened up to Indian industry, in the COVID vaccine. Exactly the same way I'm saying in all of the rest. So what Raju was talking about, whether it's energy or whether it is decarbonization, I'm saying we have to put our heads together and the resources that we have and say, how do we get out of this hole? And we have several holes to get out of. So we have poverty, we have inequality, we have very deep divisions in society, we have wasteful usage of resource, and inefficient processes that are already existing, etc. So we need growth, we need green growth, we need creation of jobs, we need creation of sustainable jobs, we need creation of wealth, and we need equity. All of this has to happen. And we should not think that this is somehow going to come from technology that's been created in Scandinavia or in Japan or wherever. That technology has primarily been created by those countries for their own countries, right? And even if they give us access to it, it will be expensive. It may not, it will take time to customize, etc., etc., etc. So my take on this is we have to now, hold the bull by the horns, realize where it is that we have to get. Prime Minister Modi has done a damn good thing by saying that the goalpost is 2070 for us and not 2050. But then that doesn't mean that we have a lot of time. So we are also the world's experts in just in time, right? We always seem to create magic at the night before the wedding, the night before the conference, the night before the seminar, the 3 minutes after tsunami, etc., etc. We have to get out of that mindset. We don't have time. It is now that we need to act, and we need to rely on ourselves and get all our creative energies going and all our efficiencies also kicking in and so on. So I'll stop there and come back when we have another opportunity.
Yep. Just one thing, Dr. Ishwar, at some time, perhaps later in your next round, perhaps you should answer the question that Abhishek was raising about energy, use of energy in that sense. And small and medium enterprises in that sense. So if you could come back to that, because you'll have to balance the sustainability part with industry and energy. And if the cost of energy itself is killing the competitiveness, then perhaps, especially at the lower end, when the small and medium enterprises, I think because you work in competitiveness, so we thought just you could reflect on it in the next part of your discussion. Mandvi.
Okay, I would like to invite Sumaira Abdulali now. I know Sumaira will say that she's not an energy expert, but I think what we are talking about, especially industry and energy, or the type of energy that we're using right now, which is mostly fossil based, and also industry being a big polluter in that sense. I think Sumaira can contribute here from her experience and expertise, because Sumaira is a very well-known environmentalist. She's been raising, voice, also building campaigns and advocacy groups on noise pollution, especially in the city of Mumbai. And she has also worked on many other under-recognized environment crises, also such as sand mining. So I think these two sectors, industry and energy, are something that I know, Sumaira, you would also be very, mindful about in your work. So please, I would like to invite you to present your intervention.
Thank you so much. And I completely agree that India is capable of doing magic, and that I don't think that the West, which has failed us so badly in bringing us into this whole climate crisis, is a great model to follow. We have revolutionized the sectors of IT, of telecom, and of course, COVID, which he mentioned. And I see no reason why we can't revolutionize the energy sector. We mentioned that steel is one of the highest energy consumption uses, but it is projected that electrical vehicles will have an even higher, much higher use than steel. So are our priorities right? We've said 2070, but if we need to start now, then maybe given our mindset, our traditional way of being that we want to do everything at the end hour, maybe we should not start doing it in 2040, as are the projections of the government-led think tanks, the government, not government-led, but the think tanks which are providing information to the government, which project that we will keep increasing our coal usage till 2040 and then drop by 99% suddenly. And in the meantime, we are going to double our coal usage. So I don't see that this is the way that you start now. If you look at the budgetary allocations, you're looking at $1.3 million for infrastructure building, which includes new coal power plants and new coal extraction, even in forests. But we're not spending anything like that towards figuring out new ways. And especially when it comes to energy, I think energy loss and transmission is a huge issue. There has been no mapping of the sector at all. So I don't know how we intend to increase by 2040 and then drop, unless we're just saying that let's just let it be now, keep increasing our coal consumption because industry is more important, and then we'll worry about it in 2040. That seems to be the way we're going. Rather than that, if we were to use our wonderful ability to innovate, we can lead the West and tell them how to go about it. We don't want to build those same models, which they are now demolishing at huge cost. So we spend $1.3 now between, say, now and 2040. Then we demolish the whole thing and start again with new technology. This doesn't make sense to me. And it's also been said in studies that we have more than 20% distribution loss. I think that's probably a very modest figure. But nevertheless, even at that figure, it's more than twice the world average. So don't we need to clean up our systems and walk the talk that we are going to suddenly come out with that magic at the end, as our cricket matches show we're so good at, and keep failing in the meantime? I hope that this mindset will change. I believe we can change it. We heard from Bankar Roy yesterday about how India is leading the solar energy revolution in so many ways, in so many multi-dimensional ways all over the world. Why can't we do it for coal? So that would be my take.
Thank you, Sumaira. I think everybody should heed to the urgency in your appeal, because 2070 may seem like a long time, but it's really not. It's really not. Also, with the ways we are going forward. Okay, over to you, Shailendra.
Yep. No, but I think Sumaira made a wonderful point there, and thank you very much for that, for highlighting that urgency that we need to have, and also to look for solutions right now instead of just waiting for a regular life cycle of a technology or an idea. Like just follow the West and then wait for it to get over and then start afresh with a new technology, which might already be too late in that sense. I think in terms of, so what Sumaira is also advocating is what we call in running a pacing strategy. And I'm so glad that Capt.Amdani is here. It's always a pleasure to see a fellow marathoner around. Hi, Captain.
Hey, Shailendra. Yep.
Hi.
Pleasure. And from your t-shirt, I could make it out. Sorry. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'm from Hyderabad, and yeah, of course. Yeah. So I wanted you to focus on this whole idea of, I mean, from a running perspective, how do you pace your eating and how do you make sure that you do not leave anything for the end only, and make sure that you keep doing that stuff from mostly as a citizen. I see that you call yourself as a global citizen in that sense, and then how do we pace this out? How do we make sure that we have scale? We also have agility, like you talk about. You also have speed, but you also do it not in a burst of energy, but a continuous process. If you could reflect on that part.
Yeah, I would. Thanks, Shailendra. It's a little tricky. Yeah, seems very easy that I could answer it in a, like woof. Okay, or probably I could share my thoughts on that. But hearing the thoughts from Mr. Raju Kane, Dr. Haritas, and Sumaira, so I think I was just trying to see if I can relate as an industry representative. How do I relate to this? How do I get in my views in terms of representing probably I would say a technology major into this. Yeah. So what I could think of is there are few things. I mean, I'm trying to see if I can mix both individual perspective and from the industry side. How do we look at it in terms of what are the ways in terms of moving towards the climate crisis? I won't say mitigation, management. Yeah, we can put words around it. But something which is like, first step would be around doing the current things. I think Mr. Raju Kane talked about the resource efficiency. Yeah. So whatever we are doing currently, if we can bring in new ways to increase the operational or eco efficiency. Yeah. We talk about energy, we talk about resources, we talk about wastage. So or waste which are being generated. How do we bring in new ways to increase the efficiency part of it? Yeah. The second one, I would say that bring in new things where we can actually promote the effectiveness and improvements or targets such as like carbon neutrality. So there are multiple companies, I think Fortune 500, they are bringing in their views in terms of committing to the net zero targets. Yeah, and my own company has committed to the target on the carbon neutrality target recently by 2025, 70% reduction. And then the third one, which is I think was also touched upon, Jugaad. I think Dr. Haritas mentioned about that, where how do we get into something which is more of a sustainable innovations, which can result into transforming the core business models itself. Yeah, which can bring in the sources of, or probably I would say revenue sources and growth. I think we also touched upon the growth aspect of it, because it cannot just go one way. It has to be both sustainability and the growth has to be aligned, has to be joining hands to move forward on anything which we are taking as kind of targets or the goals. And of course, extending to that, viewing sustainability as a differentiator in the market, where I'm looking at myself and competitor in the market. How do we make sustainability as a driver towards the growth and fuel the growth and create an entire new business model? So these are the few things which I'm thinking. My views around how do we move towards that transition towards more sustainable, or maybe to take care of the climate crisis. It may not be something which is I can't say these are all immediate ones or future later. This is a mixed basket. There are a few things which can be immediately done, short term. There are medium, and then there are long term ones. And again, those words what you mentioned about the agility, the flexibility, I would say, agility, flexibility, and scale. Speed and scale. Yeah. So these are the few things which we can bring in these initiatives or steps towards the sustainability. Yeah. So that's probably my view towards what how do we move forward.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much for your initial inputs. Now we have a huge task and a very short time to complete that task. So in the chat box, they have given us a few links to Google documents. So can I request one of the volunteers to just maybe screen share or something? Or if you can all open those documents, there is one on industry and one on energy.
Yes. So there are two Excel sheets, one on industry and one on energy. You just need to go filling up those.
What we can do is, Siddharth, if you're okay with it, because in the inputs, we have already covered a lot of points on problems, threats, challenges, and also some part of the solution. I would say in the interest of time and also because we have to cover two themes here, let's move to the buckets on maybe if anybody wants, we can do like a quick round on solutions and opportunities as well once, and then talk about stakeholders and changes to be made. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So then what we'll do is, Hanji Raj.
Since we have such an wonderful panel, I wanted to ask a question to Sumaira and to Dr. Saab, two different questions and get their inputs. Sumaira, especially because of her relationship and her work with BNHS, Bombay Natural History Society, and because this is it's a favorite bugbear of mine. People talk about carbon offsets. Industry talks about carbon offsets. The world talks about carbon offsets, and a lot of it is done by tree planting. I wanted her to weigh in on whether that actually works, because my belief is that these are just it's just rubbish. It takes 20 years for a tree to get mature, and for it to offset any carbon that is being released in the atmosphere. So this whole thing about, and the survival rate of the saplings that are planted are less than 10%. Correct me if I'm wrong, madam. Less than 10%. In which case, is this whole issue of offsetting carbon by planting trees, is that really a workable solution? That's one question to her. And the other question I thought I'll ask Dr. Ishwar is about, he has a lot of expertise in global trade. So maybe he can throw some light on what the non-tariff barriers, as they are called, some of the global north is looking at using to enforce sustainability. And that's going to actually affect a lot of Indian industry and a lot of other industries from the south. So, if you could throw some light on these 2 points.
Do you want me to start? Can you hear me? Do you want me to start?
Yes,
please. Yeah, but Sumaira, can I ask you to be brief, because we also need, I would like to talk about the sheets as well. Yeah. Sorry.
So very briefly, we have a tendency to think that a tree is oxygen and therefore a tree equals carbon offset. But a tree is not just oxygen, a tree is a whole biodiverse system. And if we are using planting trees to justify cutting forests and species loss and loss of biodiversity, then no, planting trees is actually a bad thing in that context. I hope that answers your question. And if you're also using it as an excuse to build more coal plants and all that stuff, then no, tree plantation is absolutely something which we should not be doing or encouraging. We should be encouraging tree plantation if it's in addition to saving what we have. So that's a very brief answer.
Very poignant. Yeah. Okay. And Dr. Ishwar?
So Raju has a very good point. So the European Union, through the new Green Deal, etc., will obviously put pressure on the rest of the world, especially those of us who are exporting to the EU, in terms of non-tariff barriers and so on. My own view is while we expand our export markets, which is crucial in terms of our own growth, our compliance with any of these non-tariff measures should not be at the cost of fallouts in India, is what I would say. So the new Green Deal, or if you look at the new Bauhaus project in the EU, etc., which is essentially geared towards increasing competitiveness across the different levels and elements within European economy. And this is exactly what we should also do. So we shouldn't necessarily couple what we are doing with what the EU is doing. We have to find our own solutions while expanding markets. So that would be my response.
Okay, so let's move to the sheet. I would say, because these two are quite intertwined, industry and energy. And if you think that the responses can be combined responses, then please do go ahead with that as well. I think later on we will sort them out.
What do you want us to do with the sheets?
So the sheets are being filled by the volunteers. That's okay. There are different buckets and we need to fill them in. So what I will do is I will call out the name and we will do this as a very quick, like a very lightning round. And one by one, we will, so for instance, I was starting with solutions and opportunities for industry and energy. I will call out names. You will very quickly give me a response on the same. Okay, so let me start from the list bottom up. Okay, Shubhankar Ghosh. We are talking about solutions, okay? Shubhankar?
Yeah, so solutions regarding energy dissipation, maybe?
Sorry?
Solutions regarding energy dissipation, maybe monitoring might be one of the things. Then we can map region by region, district by district, how much of energy is being lost in transmission for starters.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Shailendra?
Challenges, human resource for one, optimal instrumentation for the, I would say, the measurement of process.
Thank you, Shubhankar. Shailendra?
I think we need to get rid of inefficiencies within the system. We have spoken about transmission and distribution losses, for example, in energy. And that itself would be a great saving, and we could, just more efficient use of existing things from an energy perspective. From an industry perspective, again, looking at our internal processes and doing it the way we would want it, instead of importing models like, which has been said earlier, from West. Our conditions would be very different. Our demographies are different. The way people work here is different. So perhaps more thought on that in terms of making it more indigenous, making sure that existing inefficiencies. 100 units produced, 30 units go waste. That 30 units itself, if we produce less, we would be doing a huge contribution.
Okay. Next, Rashida. Hello?
Yeah, hello. You're asking for energy, right, ma'am?
Either energy or industry or combined.
Okay, so as far as the problem is concerned, I would say the availability of the resources so cheaply. If one were to talk about stakeholders in the city of Bombay, if I would talk about just only solar energy, there are lots of societies who want to go in for solar, but at the moment the policies are not still there, and the availability, the whereabout, and the accessibility of knowledge. So all those things are in the problem. Maybe more innovative solutions where the energy would be cheaply available, and of course the main thing is the policy level changes. So right now, I know so many societies who want to go in for solar energies, but they're all like grappling with how to go about it, and all those kind of things. Like some would say that we may go in for redevelopment, so why do the costing now? So there is a lot of awareness also amongst people, but there is this kind of a policy change, education awareness that's missing. If you were just to talk about solar energy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And any particular stakeholder you think that one should reach out to?
Right now, the stakeholders, if I specifically talk about solar energy, the stakeholders would be all the housing societies in Mumbai. Just imagine if there was a policy whereby
I mean, maybe at the BMC level or the state level, you have certain, or you already have so many smaller companies with innovative things, but they are, tackling in their own space.
Yep.
But if you had a proper policy whereby, okay, by 2025, we want all the Mumbai societies to go solar, at least for the common utilities, if not totally each individual households.
Yeah.
So common utilities, nobody really objects.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Just imagine how much of a revolution it would be in a city of Bombay.
Yeah.
Just by solar. And also something like, we all have our terraces where most of the time, most of the terraces do not have plantation. So maybe half the terraces with plants and half of it is solar. This would bring about a huge technological change.
There's a lot of space available.
So these are things possible, and now we have an environment minister who is little sensitive towards environment. So hope, these changes can take place. We could save RA because of the change in government. So at least some trees are saved. And there are a whole lot of young people who are planting trees, who are taking care of them, watering them. Even today, there is a whole group who is watering trees, this time. So we have this kind of youth in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Julia. Hi, Julia.
Hi. I would name as an opportunity the creation of good and healthy jobs in the energy sector. And a challenge for that would be the investment in education and skill development for these new jobs.
Okay. And any particular stakeholder one should be reaching out to, like a new stakeholder, not in the polls right now?
I would say it's both governance actors, governments, and industry actors.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Ishwar, would you like to add any stakeholder, any particular challenge that we missed out, or opportunity?
So several people have talked about, eliminating inefficiencies. I think that itself is a very large opportunity, especially if you look at our software sector. If we can create the technologies to monitor, to diagnose, to redistribute, etc., and in the hardware sector as well. So in that sense, so from generation to distribution to use and off-grid solutions. So that's a very large area. Even before we look at alternative sources, etc. And the one, where I completely agree with Raju and maybe slightly disagree with Sumaira, is that we have to be practical in terms of the energy mix. And we don't have a conversation around nuclear, for instance. And this is again an area where a lot of countries actually have made a lot of good use of nuclear. This is something that I don't think we are looking at very seriously. This again is something that, so even within coal, I think there is opportunity. There will be, I think it's inevitable. It's unavoidable that we will use more coal, but we have to use it more efficiently. And again, transition out in a planned manner. Nothing can be knee-jerk. Nothing can be a country the size of ours. And given the growth opportunities and the responsibilities we have in terms of beneficiation, right? So we have to grow. We don't have a choice, and we have to still pull 600 million people out of poverty. So we don't have that choice. So we don't have a choice of being sustainable by keeping people poor. That doesn't exist. So in a sense, we have to be more pragmatic and use the large capabilities we have in things like ITS, in information technology services, for instance, also in communication and so on. So that's where I'll stop for now.
Yeah. So I would also take it that one of the stakeholders one could reach out to is the IT industry, because usually when we think about industry and energy, one is not, including them in the discussion. Yeah. Okay. Abhishek.
Well, I had, but India is right now doing something very interesting, and it kind of partly answers the question that Mr. Raju Kane also raised about non-tariff barriers and things like that. It's about developing a taxonomy first, and that's the solution I'm talking about. And fortunately, we are doing that. Europe has already done it. India is doing it. Taxonomy would really help us identify sectorally what are the activities that can be called sustainable. And once those activities are defined, identified, and this work is already happening, Ministry of Finance is already looking into it, then you could mobilize finance around it. So I think right now there's a lot of confusion. What is green really? What is a sustainable asset? So one of the solutions is to look at sectorally and holistically about this taxonomy. The second aspect is that Indian taxonomy requires a different treatment. And that treatment would that it needs to embed the social element into it. When I say the social element into it, because we have a demographic element, very, very compelling element that we have to take into consideration. So when we are moving from transition, when we're moving from a non-sustainable consumption to a more sustainable consumption by identifying an activity which is sustainable, mobilizing finance on top of it, we have to ensure that the social dimension is not overlooked. And this is a unique feature that India is attempting to do. And I think it's also a space where civil society organizations can contribute immensely. I'd like to highlight one more thing very, very quickly. Again, I had said it's been oft repeated in this, is about externalities and efficiencies. The issue and the challenge there is that our governments are quite adept in doing business and as usual approach. But the moment you have to do something which is slightly more transformative, slightly more structural, you really don't really have much of convergence, coordination, and data to work with. And that's a typical limitation. So to say that India can do a lot, yes, it's sure it can do, and if the intent is there, but the fact it doesn't happen because the existing systems don't allow it to happen. So I think there is a need to strengthen the narrative on what are the external factors which can help us improve efficiency, both for industry and hence for energy consumption. And that is something that I want to sort of say in reaction to what Shailendra had said. Just to give one final example, if you want to deduce that, we ran a comparison on energy costs in Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Rajasthan. And what we realized is that the energy per unit that comes out of Rajasthan-owned plants is cheapest compared to Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. But by the time it gets to a retail level before cross-subsidization, it becomes 1.50 rupees more expensive. And these reasons are essentially administrative reasons. These are regulatory assets, interest costs, which can be cut down through administrative reforms and not really particularly energy reforms. So there is a lot to think about outside the power sector dynamics itself to get it right. Yeah.
So give me two stakeholders. One for bringing out these reforms.
Yeah. So stakeholders for taxonomy are the main sectors which contribute immensely towards carbon footprint. So you have agriculture, you have transport, and you have industry. So these are three main sectors. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And particularly with respect to externalities, again, I would say the same sectors would work, but an external view would be required in the sense that what am I talking about? So again, another thing, you need a graded response. We talk about electric mobility, but if you see the kind of cars that are coming are mostly SUVs, which is actually very worrying thing because SUV is the second highest emitter after power, even greater than aviation and shipping. So the taxonomies will help us identify where the sustainable activities are. So a graded response, a taxonomy approach to identifying sustainable activities. The three sectors, as I said, would be the sectors that are relevant from both socioeconomic and carbon footprint point of view.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Raju, Mr. Raju Kane?
Yep. So, so people have tackled larger issues earlier, and so I won't touch upon those. I find it very strange. I'll give you an example. I'm actually in the process of putting up a solar energy system for my house. Okay. And so while doing research for that, I discovered that Maharashtra government has a subsidy scheme, which is very badly managed, which is terribly run, and which is, as a result, no supplier of solar panels is willing to provide at that cost. that. So the subsidy rule says that I will be entitled to 20% subsidy. Okay. On the other hand, I also have to pay 18% GST on the panels. To me, this is absurd. I mean, the government's left hand doesn't know what its right hand is doing. Why do you provide a subsidy and then impose GST? Why not just simplify the entire process? I think this is a typical Indian bureaucratic decision-making thought process in action. So someone said, "Oh, we need to encourage solar energy, so let's provide subsidy." But no, we need revenue, so also put GST. I think my solution is very simple. Get your act together on simple things. It does, there are far larger issues that are out there, and for example, the huge amounts of investments will be needed in the research for alternative process of so green hydrogen or green ammonia, whatever. So there are a lot of them. People talk about all these processes, but they will require a lot of investment in the research to make them commercially viable. So that's one part. But I'm saying even the simple things, get them right in simple manner. Let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that you don't have silly situations like this.
Yeah, I think also what Abhishek was talking about, that we work in silos. So exactly what you're saying. Okay, give me 2-3 stakeholders who need to be reached out to.
Well, one stakeholder I think we have not talked about here, and because I've done a lot of work in the financial sector, I think today there is no premium attached or no discounting attached to shares of companies which pollute more or are more sustainable. I think if we make our disclosure standards very stringent in terms of what the companies are doing, so there are some disclosure standards, but they're not very stringent. To make the disclosure standards very stringent, so that the companies are forced to disclose how much what is their carbon footprint, and what are they doing to mitigate that. I think you will see either a premium for more sustainable companies or a discount for less sustainable companies coming in. And believe me, when it hurts your pocket, most promoters will start trying to be more sustainable.
Sure, thank you. And Sumaira, can I ask you also for a quick last word, solution, challenge, and stakeholders?
Well, I completely agree with many of the things that have been said. And I feel that, to make governments pay up and put their money where their mouth is and streamline systems, you need people. And people, when they demand that they want solar power on their rooftops, or they demand that they want cleaner energies, or they want to buy products which are cleaner, made in a more sustainable way, well, all these stakeholders, they are all stakeholders, will be forced to do that and to put money into it. What is really, really missing today for India to take the leadership role that I talked about is budgets, whether they're industry budgets or whether they're government budgets. Our budgets are going in building as fast as we can. I have nothing against building as fast as we can. But if we were to put some percentage of that, a substantial percentage, not something which is laughable in comparison to our building budgets, into R&D and into figuring out those ways, we definitely have the ability. So I would say people need to push the governments, the industry, who are full of excuses as to why this is more important. Their reasoning is right, because that's what the people are asking for. And poverty alleviation, just as a final word, poverty alleviation has many dimensions. When climate change destroys a whole area, that does not help in poverty alleviation. So perhaps we do need to take our poorest along with us, and we need to recognize that they are the greatest sufferers, and we need to do it in such a manner that we take every sector of people along with us and don't let them suffer the effects of climate change. We don't need to recreate the mistakes of the West, where for the convenience of a few people, we have destroyed the rest of the world and made the poorest more vulnerable than ever before, whether it's from migration, forced migration, or anything else. So that's really what I have to say. We need the money there, and we need to force them to put the money there.
Absolutely. Totally with you on this. Okay, we also have a lot of volunteers, young volunteers with us, Siddharth, Sakshi, Nikhil, Pariya. Would you also like to quickly, if you have any ideas, this is very important here, quickly holders that need to be included?
I have a question.
Before the
Oh, leave record room aa raha hai kya? Nikhil.
Yeah. Should I ask or should wait?
So we can go into the main round because I think they'll switch us in a few seconds there. But if you have a question particularly for anyone, then do post it in the main chat. Okay. Do take it up in the main chat.
Mandvi,
oh, sorry. Yes, I missed you. How come?
You're missing the industry representative. The only industry representative.
Yes.
So since I come from a technology background and technology company, I would say there are three ways to look at it in terms of creating a purposeful ecosystem, bringing in all the stakeholders, and focusing on green software, green digital infrastructure, and green initiatives hand in hand with the government and communities. So these are the focus areas where we focus on the AI. Yeah,
I'm
am I audible to you?
Missing you? Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I was stressing on three things in terms of from a technology company: green software, green infrastructure, and green initiatives hand in hand with government and the communities. Yeah. So examples of that: green software, I could say product as a service or a platform where if you would have seen product as a service, there are a lot of resources like laptops, for simple example. Those are available on paper users kind of approach. Yeah. So the business model has been defined. Green infrastructure, I'm sure, data, probably you are aware, data centers, they consume 1% of global energy, 1% of global energy. So effectiveness of global data center running is another area where we can focus on to. And third one is, I would give a food wastage initiative, which is taken by one of the IT majors using the blockchain as a technology. Yeah, so that's the third example I would like to quote, focusing on these three initiatives. I rest my case.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry I missed you. But I take it as that IT industry again has to be an equal partner here.
It needs to be backbone. Now we have learned from pandemic, you buy most of the things online nowadays. So I think it needs to be, a kind of a digital backbone for anything and everything we do towards sustainability and climate change.
Absolutely, rightly said. Okay, so thank you. We have our expert somewhere here, I'm sure. Thank you, Shailendra, as well. You want to say something?
I'll take over and mention we will have chat box